So welcome, everyone. I want to start by acknowledging that we're on the traditional unceded Indigenous territories belonging to the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish, and we're very honored and happy to be doing this work on their lands today. We want to start while you're just getting into your lunch and enjoying your lunch by showing a short video about diversity circles. Many in the room might be aware of diversity circles. It was launched as a partnership between the BCIT FSA and BCIT with a $150,000 grant from SSHRC. And it's been a real honor to do this work and to have everyone's participation, myself and the co-creator of Diversity Circles, Za Joseph. I also want to thank Teresa Place, the outgoing president of the FSA, and the board of directors from 2015 to 2016 who originally approved this project. I want to thank everyone who participated, BCIT for supporting our SSHRC application, and Kathy Kinlock in particular, who in May made an announcement that BCIT will continue the ongoing funding for diversity circles now that the SSHRC grant is over. So thank you very much to Kathy and to BCIT for continuing this important work. I also want to recognize Kyla Epstein, who's the project manager for Diversity Circles. One of the great things about Diversity Circles is that it gains its own momentum. And so the event today had two faculty champions. Catherine Golder from the Communication Department and Mirella Gudica were the faculty, from Computing, were the faculty champions. So Catherine and Mirella, if you could just stand up for 2 seconds, I want to recognize you. They spearheaded this work, and it's just great to see that momentum and all the champions and mentors of Diversity Circles who have come up through the past 3 years. Thank you for your help. So I'm going to turn on the Diversity Circles video, and then we will move into the next part.
The discussion of diversity and equity that we've done with Diversity Circles has really enhanced what's happening at BCIT. There's lots of groups that are doing great work around campus, but sometimes they're not linked.
We're really blessed and humbled to have the knowledge holders from Indigenous communities with us, and today was a great example of that. We're so fortunate to have the wisdom of the elders shared with us, to have elders participating in our events, other staff from Indigenous services, visitors from local communities and even distant communities, and it's just amazing to have that.
When we came together before contact, it was material things. We didn't know money. And we would give certain gifts, handmade gifts. And this is how we grew up. You talk about diversity. I have a difficult time standing up here, the Anthonasquethi, Tanalton, Swalastanot, Kolastanot, because it does nothing to your mind to understand what I just said. I have jobs within my community that then it's meaningful for me to communicate those words.
We're really looking to grow the relationship with the people that we've met on campus who are part of this work, who are living this work every day, who are doing it in the classrooms, in the hallways, in their offices.
I think Diversity Circles has just expanded. I think from the very beginning they were looking into getting involved with all community members across campus. I think that just naturally happened. I think pride is growing on campus. I think support towards Indigenous services is also growing. Diversity Circles has really kind of started the foundation for all of those different areas, for people to come together.
I think it's really important projects like this to remind people to connect with each other outside the classroom and to learn their stories and learn how they all fit into this community. And to me, it's important to highlight those things.
It has been actually quite extraordinary to see the impact that it has had. I've attended a couple of workshops. It was interesting to see those conversations happen and to see the way that people progressed in their thinking even during the course of the workshop. And to hear people have this real enthusiasm for it and to want to try and implement something similar in their own organizations. And that's been really encouraging to see as well.
And really diversity is just understanding that we don't know everything about everybody, we don't know where everyone's coming from, but we respect where those people are coming from and we honor that they have the space and the room to be who they are.
In Indigenous communities, the communication was quite sophisticated. The way we have always appreciated diversity of voices. We'll never agree on everything, but we can still sit in a circle and still have conversations and still be ourselves.
I think the more we feel that we're part of a community at BCIT, the more work will get done, the better we'll work together. And I think it shows not just within our work relationships with each other, but it affects the entire institute, it affects the students, it affects our standing in society. It's all a good thing.
We know how diverse we are, but we share common stories in that diversity. And I think that's what we're discovering here at BCIT, that we are diverse people, but we share common ground. And on that common ground, we can start to walk together in a good way.
Learning about all these different cultures, this will help inform my practice. I have to immerse myself in other people's culture to be able to serve them better.
I think the other thing about diversity circles is that it should hypothetically create exponential change, like ripple out to many other areas, and that's really what we want for it. We don't want to be contained, we want to ripple out into people's lives, into people's communities, into their teaching practice, into their work practice, and if we've done it right, it will ripple outwards and have that type of impact.
Okay, so I just wanted to mention a couple of things to sort of housekeeping items. Please continue to help yourself to food and things like that throughout the time here. There's a sign-in sheet just in terms of tracking numbers and folks that come over by the door, and I've got another one that I'll start to circulate as well. And then also, as you can tell, and we should have mentioned this at the beginning, there's a video capture happening right now, as well as I am taking photographs. If you do not want to appear in any photographs, come to me afterwards. I'll take down a description and make sure I crop you out or don't use ones with you in it. The video capture is for posting afterwards for folks who couldn't come but wanted to be here. So, and the lens is sort of on here, focused on here. When we get the questions and answers, because this is being captured and recorded, if you have a question, one of us will run over with a handheld mic, so just hold on with your question until we get to you. Okay, so we are really excited. As many of you probably know, Diversity Circles started out as a project sort of geared towards the people who work at BCIT and work in the BCIT partner world. And with the expansion of the funding from BCIT, we can now open it up to students attending the events, and hopefully we're going to work with more students in the future. We were able to work with students as our ambassadors in the past, but we want to grow that. And so part of that is that we're really excited to have a student moderating the speakers today. Miranda Patton is a fourth-year computer systems technology student, fourth term, and has a previous bachelor's degree in psychology and experience working in the social services. Miranda hopes to continue, oh, that's my timer telling you all to stop. Miranda hopes to continue on in the helping profession by working on software to improve the lives of those in need. And Miranda will be graduating in December and says she will miss BCIT, but is excited to discover what lies beyond. So join me in welcoming Miranda.
So I'm going to introduce our first speaker. So Fariba is the past president and currently on the advisory council of SWIST, the Society for Canadian Women in Science and Technology, a nonprofit association that encourages and empowers women and girls in science and technology. She is currently the director of corporate strategic projects at BC Liquor Distribution Branch. She is also the chair of the BCIT Computing Program Advisory Committee. She is a Gender Equality Network Canada leader, which is a national network of over 150 diverse women leaders from across Canada working together to advance gender equality in Canada. Please welcome Fariba. Where is the... Oh gosh.
Thank you, Miranda.
Top right. Sorry.
Oh, Shift F5 should work.
Okay. Nope. Oh, present. That makes sense. Sorry.
Oh, and this is the clickers. Sure. Thank you very much, Miranda. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the intro, Miranda. I want to start with telling you about my technical background. I am, by heart, a technical woman. So I got my hardware engineering degree from Iran, and I was working designing boards and setting up computers before I moved to Canada. And when I came here, I started to work actually in software engineering. And right now I'm working in more project management, but I have a very, very close relationship with BCIT. Every time I needed to improve my technical expertise, I took some courses at BCIT. And also, from the time I'm working with SQUIST has a very strong relationship with BCIT as well. So when I was talking to Mirella about what we want to talk in here about, she mentioned that we had already discussed all of the aspects of diversity, why diversity is good, and we were talking about gender diversity in general, which is the biggest category that we can think of is women, that they are 51% of our population, but they are not represented the same amount everywhere, right? So I decided to actually talk about what we are doing with the SQUIST and what are the actions we have started to take so far. Basically, we all know diversity is good, right? If I come here, still you guys hear me? Is that okay? So we all know that diversity is good. And it's not just about diversity, it's diversity and inclusion, right? Because one of my mentors always says, diversity like, oh, thank you. Diversity is like inviting someone to a party, and inclusion is asking them to dance, bring them in, helping them. So we know they are good, but what we are going to do about it? Few years ago, I started to think about myself. I said, well, I have all of these experiences. Why I am not getting to more leadership roles? And that's the time that actually a good friend of mine introduced me to SQUIST. So how many of you know about the SQUIST, Society for Canadian Women in Science and Technology? Quite a few, and I'm actually glad to see a couple of gentlemen know about it, so good for you. So at that time, we started to think about how we can add more women leaders in STEM fields, in science, technology, engineering, and math, to become more leaders in Canada. So we did a lot of work. We worked with V4She. Perhaps you all heard about V4She is going to happen. I think it's today, or it was, yeah, it was this week. It's today, I think. So we were one of the first groups that we worked with V4She, and many other activities and engagements. We tried to find out, okay, we are talking about all of these things that diversity is good for 30 years, but what we're going to do about it, really? And we got to a certain point that we need to take some initiatives at individual level. So in order to individually be able to improve the diversity, we need to actually create access, we need to create availability, and we need to actually empower individuals that they can become leaders. And that's what we started to build a mentorship program for women in STEM. I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, but that was from an individual level. Then we thought, okay, we have done individual, but no matter how much effort I put in there, am I going to get a role? And to be honest, I have to tell you, you heard about imposter syndrome for women, right? Sometimes we think, oh, maybe I'm not good enough. Or, oh, maybe it's because of my accent, because I'm an immigrant, or maybe because I'm a woman. Many different things come your way. So we decided that we have to do something from an organizational level that can help us to reach to that diversity we are talking about. And that's why we came with the concept of not change woman. Like, I was always thinking maybe I should go and improve my accent, not to have an accent. Then some of my mentors said, no, we understand you. Why do you want to change your accent? I said, well, maybe I should not change myself. Maybe the system needs to change. And after that, although even some organizations want to help, but still it should be a more mandated need from a government, from more power, that we can actually make the change happen. We all know change is difficult. So we have to have extra support to make the change happen. And that's why we thought that from a government perspective level, we need to have some work done. And we joined to Gender Equality Network Canada, that I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it. So we started with mentorship program with this vision. We wanted to have a world where aspiration, opportunity, and diversity intersect. And this came to us after a couple of bottles of wine. One night we were talking about our vision. And I found it is amazing. Like, it's simple, it's understandable, and we were not talking about men, women, or gender or anything. We are talking about diversity in general, right? And opportunities and aspirations. But for our organization, our mission was to help women to connect, collaborate, and lead through a dedicated mentoring network in science, technology, engineering, and math. And that's why we built our Make Possible. Make Possible is a platform that for mentorship is free for everyone to join. You can become a mentor, mentee, or both. You can decide in what area you want to become a mentor or mentee, and then it can connect you. I was just giving an example at our table. I wanted to get the feedback from a CEO level about something at the time I was working on. And I was thinking, I don't know any CEO I can contact. So I went to Make Possible. I was able to contact the CEO of MyTech from UBC. And just the next day, I have a meeting with him. And we had about 2 hours meeting. So that was helpful for me at the time. So it's a great opportunity for anyone individually wants to get involved in a mentorship program. I'm sure there are lots of mentorship talk is happening, a lot of activities is happening, but the platform can help you if you want to join. Now, when we go to organizational level, what are the things we need to do? So we talked about diversity, we talked about inclusion, right? What we were trying to do, we said in order to make diversity possible now, so we are going one level higher than just make possible, we are going to make diversity possible. And that's when we are talking to organizations and helping them to understand the benefits of diversity, first of all. Also to understand that what are their biases? What are the culture in the organization? How is it working for diverse group of people that are working there? So we engage with the specific groups and organizations in STEM fields. Like, for example, we are working with Traction on Demand from a technology side. We are working with the engineering group. We are working with a science company that I don't remember what is the name. But with all of them, we go through these exercises. And we try to actually help them to grow, to be more diverse, to grow, to be more understanding of their own biases. So what we normally do when we go to those organizations, we start with a diversity by design workshop. And that workshop there, basically, we talk to them about the business case for diversity. We talk about understanding their own unconscious biases. And the gender language is another thing which is very interesting. We never thought about it before. Even the job descriptions and everything, they have a specific languages. And honestly, I'm hiring a lot, and I always find myself that I'm biased when I'm hiring. So I have to check myself, go back and just say, okay, if this person was a woman, I would think the same, or if this lady was a gentleman, I would think the same or not. So we have to check ourselves. What we do normally, for those organizations that we work with, we create a roadmap for success. We work with their HR groups, human resources, that they can actually think about their recruitment and retention after that, development and promotion. Like, one of the things that you can think about, if a woman goes on paternity leave, right, after giving birth and come back, what are the things we can do to help them, especially from a technology perspective that is moving so fast that they can come back with confidence? Like, can we have something at BCIT that can help them to very quickly adopt the new technology or not? So those are the things we have to think when we think basically in a higher level. Also, workplace culture and family-friendly policies. Can they bring their kids into work, or do they have a daycare or opportunities like that? So those are the things I think we have a lot of researchers in the room. So things to always think when you do any research in any area, always think about diverse group of people that you're supposed to be impacted by your research. And then we try to find the ways that we can minimize the biases, individual biases, organizational biases. Actually, I had a lot of caricature, which I didn't put in here, but it was showing all of these different pictures from boardrooms and executive team members of the big companies, that they're all like looking the same, basically. And giving an issue to the same people, they always come with the same results. That's why we know already diversity is good. We have all of those catalyst reports, and we have all other type of research is done. So the point is how we can sell those ideas now to organizations that they can actually take action. And we know change is difficult, right? That's why this type of workshop can help them actually to understand their own unconscious biases, and they look at their all of the things they are doing from a human resources perspective. Now, some of the things I thought this is kind of interesting. Changing the corporate culture is not an easy thing. So that's why we are working with them through things like job ads, hiring processes, promotions, rewards, pay, internal communications, whatever that works for them. So it's a big commitment they are making. And the good thing about Vancouver is, as one of the 25 top tech cities in the world, they are open for it. So, which is really amazing. So I'm going to just talk this quickly about Gender Equality Network Canada. It came about last year, and basically 150 women were selected across Canada from different aspects. Our organization, Squiz, was selected from a STEM field, perspective and women in leadership role in those areas. And we are working through coming with action plans for government, basically. And then government can decide how they're going to use them. So I can give you just one example of what we are saying is we are suggesting like a policy of 40-40-20. For senior roles, we should have 40% men, 40% women, and 20% whatever works. Should we apply that or not? So it's still a conversation happening with these women leaders. But just as an example that I thought it was interesting. So we need to take action to promote diversity. And that means we have to think out of the box. We have to be aware of our own personal biases. And talk about it. When you sit at the table, dinner table, or when you're talking to friends, or you see something that shows you there's a bias in there, speak up. And that's the part I found the most challenging for me, because I'm always looking for harmony. But we have to take action, and that's one of the actions that I think we can take. So, thank you. Should I turn this up?
Okay. Sorry. So our next speaker is Kathy. So Kathy is the president of Engineers and Geoscientists BC. She's a professional engineer in BC. She has been teaching mechanical engineering at Camosun College since 1994 and is an adjunct professor at UBC. For her doctorate of social sciences, Kathy explored the perceptions of gendered careers in high school with the goal of increasing gender diversity in engineering. Kathy is a fellow of Engineers Canada. Please welcome Kathy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I too will do this slightly. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you, Catherine, for insisting. And And thank you, too, for using my title of president, because now I can get engineers and geoscientists to pay for my travel. I'm based in Victoria. That's where Camosun College is, and I'm truly happy, very happy to be here. This is an example that I think many institutions really need to follow. I'm grabbing all the documentation and taking as many notes as I can. I've been asked to bring you a couple of strategies that we've been working on, and because of the two hats that I've been wearing recently, and you heard I just completed my doctorate, I really have two strategies that I would like to share with you. And these are two gaps in the pipeline of women, for young women to come into the engineering profession, which has been a focus of mine for, I'd say, going on 15, 20 years now. So the two gaps that I see that are still persisting, and we've been attacking many of the early ones in education, are really between high school and post-secondary education, and between post-secondary education and industry. And fortunately, I am in a couple of roles that fit that quite well. So let me first start with the gap that I see really for the first piece, the high school to post-secondary education. When I was looking at the data that we have at Camosun College, I saw really quickly that we have a very high percentage of students who completed Physics 11. 40% of all the students at Camosun College since 1972 who completed Physics 11, 40% were women. But they're not in engineering or physics or engineering-related type careers. And believe me, I was very, very flexible in my definition of engineering-type careers, and all of you communications experts and web designers were included in my bucket. It's interesting, there's been research that's conducted in the Pacific Northwest that really identified some of the qualitative reasons why girls don't pursue physics and engineering after Physics 11. And some of the things that they were talking about was that they could not see how to use physics to make the world a better place, really talking about that helping profession that was mentioned earlier this afternoon. They couldn't see what new there was to learn in physics. It appeared to them that physics was a dead science, which is kind of bizarre. But that was the perception that they were receiving. And the third piece was that they didn't feel like they belonged in the physics classroom. When probed further, why do they not feel like they belonged in the classroom? They cited things like, boys' questions are always answered first. The teachers always spend more time with the boys. When boys ask stupid questions, they're taken seriously. But when girls ask stupid questions, everyone laughs. So we thought, well, that's kind of interesting. So I probed a little further with my doctorate, and that's what the focus of my doctoral research was on, was looking at the Physics 11 classroom. How can we make it more inclusive to boys and girls? Looking at both. And my research findings, I'll tell you later, I found some unexpected findings, but did discover that the techniques that we employed really do increase belonging for girls and boys, for everyone in the classroom. And I think that's what we're really looking for. What I did was introduce the engineering design process to these Physics 11 teachers. And I said, why don't we start from a place where we pull context at the beginning, and we pull context from the student's lived experience. Not context that the teacher comes up with, but context that the students can identify. I mean, so I've given you the example of the suitcase roller that's broken. We were looking at friction. We had examples of trying to move a bed, trying to move a box at work, trying to ski, trying to play field hockey, trying to play rugby, using a scrum machine. We had lots of examples the students could bring. And then they were asked to work in small groups to identify the scenario and figure out how they could make a change. And then develop a prototype to test, come up with a verification test, and then from the data that they collected, determine what the theory was. And of course, it matched what the expectations were, but it completely flipped the teaching paradigm that we were seeing in schools in physics. In the physics education system so far, and from what I could see really across the continent. It's interesting, as soon as we changed the focus into the students' lived experience, the boys' sense of belonging also increased in the physics classroom. So the second piece that I wanted to talk to you about, and I'm very aware that I have about 5 minutes, so you can get that hook out if I start talking too long, because I'll go on and on and on about everything. The second piece is that retention piece that really we've been talking about, and that Fariba was talking about with her mentoring programs and the other networking opportunities available on various sites now. The research really shows quite significantly that in general, men tend to be more satisfied in the workplace if they have a good salary and if they can see that the things that they're working with, especially in the technical sectors, if the toys that they're working with, the products that they're producing are interesting and fun in general, right, in general. And in general, women tend to find more satisfaction if they can see how the work that they are doing has a positive social impact. And if they work with colleagues that have similar positive attitudes and they get that kind of support in the workplace, definitely more of that inclusion and belonging. So what we've been doing at Engineers and Geoscientists BC is we jumped onto the Engineers Canada strategy of working towards increasing the number of newly registered engineers who are women to 30% by 2030. This is their 30 by 30 program. We've been working with the other regulators across the country, sharing best practices, supporting each other. We have teleconferences where we talk about some of the ideas that are at play in each of our provinces and territories, and then building on those ideas and trying to implement those things at home. So when I was the 30 by 30 champion 3 years ago for Council of Engineers and Geoscientists, British Columbia, I initiated a 30 by 30 network in the province. So we began to call on all of the divisions and branches in Engineers and Geoscientists BC and ask them to appoint a champion at the table. And the role of that champion is really to be an advocate for inclusion, keeping in mind the women in engineering lens and knowing that any changes that we make for women in engineering are bound to spill over into the other profession that we regulate, which is geoscience in British Columbia. So that was how we started to build the network, and that was how we connected. I connected with BCIT, and Catherine Golder and I were connected, and I asked her if she would be one of the 30 by 30 champions for BCIT. We're very fortunate here at this institution, and you now have two 30 by 30 champions, not only Catherine Golder, but Phyllis Chong. Is Phyllis here today? No. So I'm really excited because what it means is that you have representatives at more than one table who will sit there and be an advocate for women at the table. The idea, again, is that we can share resources across the nation, across the province, and now between institutions. We have 30 by 30 champions at Vancouver campus of what's that big institution? UBC. We have a 30 by 30 champion at the Kelowna campus. We have one at SFU. We've got one at Camosun College. We're getting one at UVic. And it's another way that we can start to connect these institutions and share resources on best practices and how to increase the number of women recruitment and retention. Just in case you're interested, it has been slowly working, really slowly. So part of the reason why I'm very happy to be here too is just to share with you some of our work and to encourage you at your tables, if you can also be an advocate and speak up, give the women, give the minorities at your table a voice, give them the space to have their voice heard, help them to find their voice. And that's really what this is all about. Our latest statistics here in British Columbia, we are at 13.8% women for our registered engineers. We are now at, as of 2017, our newly licensed engineers were 15.2% women. That's an increase from the year before. And the best news that we have right now is in British Columbia, 21.9% of engineers in training, so graduates who have not yet registered, are women. So we're working towards our goal, and we're hoping to meet it, but I believe that by connecting, by sharing best practices, by supporting each other, and just by being advocates, allies, open-minded people at the table will go a long way to helping that happen. So thank you so much for your time. If you have more questions, I'm really happy to say whatever it is that I can into your ear. If you want more information about 30 by 30, I encourage you to check out our website. We have a number of resources online. We also have a mentoring program for engineers and geoscientists. All members, student members, are included in that. You have access to that mentoring program. And if you want to just get a hold of me, I put my email on there too. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you so much. I have a piece of sad news, which is that Stephanie Redivo from SAP contacted me to let me know that something urgent and unexpected came up, so she's not able to be here today. Fortunately, I attended Stephanie's plenary talk to some of our alumni on September 15th, and so I asked Stephanie her permission just to share a bit of the work that Stephanie is doing, so that although I pale in comparison to Stephanie herself, I hope you will indulge me and we'll learn a little bit about SAP's work. So Stephanie is the Global Diversity and Inclusion Senior Program Manager at SAP. She led the planning and execution of the EDGE certification across 12 countries. EDGE certification is the Economic Dividends for Gender Equality certificate, and SAP was the first multinational technology company to be awarded EDGE certification. And in her previous role at SAP, she was a senior project manager for business intelligence and Sci-based technology, managing new release training for all consultants across North America and Europe. So I'm just going to show a short video and then share with you just a little bit of Stephanie's slide presentation.
I was born in a really small village in western part of India.
My autism is classified as Asperger's syndrome.
As a female, I was actually quite scared to apply for the position.
I didn't know whether I could be myself or what was the right kind of thing to do.
Companies just weren't willing to look at me and take me seriously.
It's very common that gays, lesbian, transgender, they don't hire.
Make sure you have enough time for your family and be a good employee and have a good job as well.
I've got a dream. While I'm wiping the desk, I'm like, one day I'll be sitting in this meeting room.
I wasn't sure if my experience was still valid.
My wife was 6 months pregnant when I accepted the job at SAP.
I can say there was jumping and screaming in an elevator.
And after I entered SAP, I got to know the policies that involve diversity.
I felt in that interview like I wasn't being judged at all.
My strange behaviors were not pinpointed.
Studies show that with a more diverse workforce, you get higher profitability and higher growth in revenue as well. So it's a no-brainer, really.
It doesn't matter who I am.
I have a pretty normal life, just in a wheelchair.
What is my sexual orientation?
For the first time, I feel like I'm part of something.
I feel like I'm exuding with happiness about how positive and amazing and supportive the SAP environment is to me as a lesbian, as a woman, as a mom.
I know that SAP will support me as a young mom.
You feel embraced. You feel as you're part of something.
And they believe in people and they develop, there's like lots of opportunities for growth.
If you want to develop software, it's a great place to be. And the disability is not important.
I am the face.
I am the face of
business. I am the face
of business beyond bias.
I am the face of business beyond bias.
Okay, so as I mentioned, Stephanie did give a plenary talk to some of our BCIT alumni in the technical writing program, and we also invited computing students and other technology students to that particular talk. So I just wanted to mention quickly the 4 pillars of SAP's diversity and inclusion program are gender intelligence, cross-generational intelligence, culture and identity, differently abled people, and then they have a whole series of intersectional groups and activities. But I did want to mention what Stephanie was going to focus on today was the actual technology piece. Obviously, SAP is a tools company and a business intelligence company, so using their existing human resources platforms and other business intelligence platforms, she was going to talk specifically about the HR piece. So both Fariba and Kathy mentioned hiring and retention. What Stephanie would have done, or what I've seen her do, is to get the audience to think about certain words that might have certain connotations, and just sort of ask the audience to reflect for a moment on, do you have a particular idea of certain genders or certain identities that might fit with certain words? And of course, that's leading into the notion of how certain associations, often unconscious associations that we have, fit into recruiting, hiring, and retention. So at SAP, basically every job ad and every job description goes through a software program, which has a huge database of words and statistically correlated associations with those words. And so job ads and job descriptions are vetted to see if there are particular words where you could, in fact, use a synonym for a word, but it would be a synonym that doesn't have a strongly gendered association with it. So the word would still do the job, still do the trick, but would not have a particular gendered association with it. And of course, it's done by technology. It's not done by a person vetting the job descriptions. So that was very interesting. So all managers would put the job ad and job descriptions into the software program and then get feedback from that. So basically, that can be carried forward into other elements of the business process. And I won't go on about that because I'm not, and I don't work at SAP, but I just happened to attend Stephanie's plenary, so I feel reasonably qualified to do what I'm doing today. But certainly the software goes, the functionalities of the software allow them to measure again using machine intelligence rather than relying only on people to look at things like retention numbers, how people are promoted, how people are developed, how people are recognized, and to sort of measure to make sure that there's no unconscious bias, but also to have metrics. And both speakers today talked about how important it is to have targets, actual numerical targets. This is what we are going to have, in X number of years, X number of people. And so there are software tools that can help you do that. So sorry you're not here, Stephanie. Hopefully I didn't mess it up too much. And audience, thank you for indulging me and learning a little bit more about how to encourage gender diversity. Thank you.
So what we'll do is we'll get Kathy and Fariba to come back up, and then if folks have questions for them, and I'll be running around with the microphone, so just put your hand up and we'll grab you. And I'll give you each one of these.
And I do want to mention that there's trays of bannock, delicious bannock over here, so please make sure that you get some and don't leave the room without it.
I think it's a duet here. Anyway.
Yeah, we lost a mic, so any questions? No. Oh, hold on, I'm just going to bring you a microphone.
Recently, I was contacted by the City of Vancouver, who had $50,000 that they wanted to put into recruitment of engineers into their engineering department as well as their automotive department. They contacted the co-op office to find out how we could use that $50,000 to increase the number of women that were coming out of the programs. I'm fairly new to BCIT as well, so I looked around to figure out how we do this. It was very difficult to find a way to engage the City of Vancouver in that. It ended up being that we spoke a lot about the recruitment, how to put that money together with BCIT to look at how to recruit people or women into these programs at BCIT. But in terms of actually engaging the Institute in terms of curriculum and where the City of Vancouver could put that money, I found that really difficult as an employee, where to go in the Institute and how to do that.
I'm not so sure that's a question for us.
Well, you're right. It is more a question for BCIT, but do you have any insights about how you facilitated the flow of information or what techniques you used to make sure people were aware of the programs that you're forwarding in your areas? And then I will also attempt to answer, but
Well, I'm going to just answer the way we work at SQuest. So basically, we actively looking for different opportunities. We have a board member, which is basically for grants, working on it. We have a big movement. Is a new initiative we have started. It's called SQuest, Spirit of SQuest. We want to put funding enough that we are not always looking for funds from government. So basically, we are doing two things. We are actively looking for those type of grants. We also have committee members that they are trying to apply for them, right? But finding different resources that they can actually get involved, or the organizations that you need to work with, that's a different story. You have to plan for those things ahead of time. You cannot just be at the instant go and find things. So, but this happens. So the best way, I would say, some organization like BCIT can handle it is always have people that they know these things may come, and then have some templates ready that they can start using them and applying it for them. We have been actually quite lucky. We found things in the last minute, like in the 2-3 days, and we were all able to actually turn them around and get benefit out of them. So it's a lot of extra work from your side or BCIT side that you need to take care of.
If I may add to that too, I mean, my first thought when you said you had $50,000 that you're trying to figure out what to do with, I thought, well, we have a foundation, and we give a lot of scholarships to students, and I believe BCIT students often do get scholarships. So that's kind of one of the first things that makes me think of is how can you develop a strategy that will make the job postings that are posted on the job board more appealing to women? How can you use some of those more feminine-based words to make sure that those job postings are much more inclusive of not just men and women, but all gender identifications? And I was just saying at my table when you were talking about the wording that was up in your presentation on behalf of our colleague, that there is evidence that indicates that if you have job postings that use more of those masculine type words, that men will apply to those postings and women generally will not. But if job postings are created that have more gender neutral or even more feminine type words in them, that women will apply to those postings and men will apply to those postings. So really employers are losing nothing if they just change the language. The other thing that I would suggest is that there might be an opportunity for a co-op student within your own organization, within the co-op department, to do some work pulling together those kinds of resources and perhaps to create some kind of a filter, or maybe even to look at connecting and partnering with SAP and seeing if you can use some of their analytics to look at job postings that are coming in and then help employers to make them more inclusive.
You did answer the question.
Yeah, well, after I got past the I'd like that money piece, yeah.
Other questions from the audience?
Thanks so much for your great presentations. I'm not sure if it's much of a question, but I just wanted to sort of add to the discussion and the challenges of discrimination within our institutes and how we face it on an individual basis. I just speak from a racial discrimination standpoint or perspective, and I don't in any means mean to compare. But there's that issue of tokenism within our institutes and ways that we look at that. How do you face that question if that does come up? And I'm not an engineer, I work in the Indigenous department, but I'm curious on how that may come up in women engineering.
Well, I was hired at de Havilland Aircraft in Toronto in the late 80s in the midst of all of the affirmative actions. And although I know that Boeing Canada at that time was definitely a very inclusive and equal opportunity employer, and I know that I had the skills and knowledge and persistence necessary to get a job there, that comment did come up pretty frequently. We just need more women on staff. We need to increase the number of women, female engineers that we have on staff. That's why you got the job. And at that time in my naivete, I would say, oh yeah, well that might be why I got the job, but I'm still here because I'm good. But I realize that that's a real barrier to a lot of minorities, and not just women, right? It's everything that we can do for women in engineering will benefit the whole population. So I think part of it is standing up when we hear comments like that are wildly inappropriate. When we're the recipient, to question, excuse me, I heard what you said, and I think this is what, I'm not really sure I understand what you mean. Could you explain that for me? Sometimes those kinds of comments really just need a light shone on them, and quite often the person saying them is not even thinking about it. Also, if we hear those kinds of comments being directed at someone in our vicinity, again, to stand up and say, excuse me, I think we need some clarification on what it was you just said. So that's kind of, for me, the easiest and safest way is just to shine a light.
I can tell you about my personal experiences. So to start with, I was always working harder than any other men around me because I was always in a male-dominated environments working, and I had to prove myself, especially being from Iran, which women are second-degree citizens. That was even worse. So when I came to Canada, I thought that's over. So I was so happy, and then I was feeling that, wow, this is my land, till I get to a certain point. And then I felt the glass ceiling. And then that's the part that I started to feel, okay, what can I do? So what I learned from some of the mentors, they told me just make yourself capable enough that you can compete with men. Don't think about being a woman or being minority or whatever you are. So just do whatever is need to be done. So still, there are times that I question myself, especially if someone has a comment or they they bring it up, oh, well, you have these opportunities because, for example, you're a woman. It doesn't happen much to me because everybody see how hard I work to get there. But if it comes, we have to challenge them that there are always different capabilities of the people everywhere in every gender or every group of people, that they can be different, but I think we have to speak up. One of the things we were talking today is about individually we should speak up when we see the biases, and then we should challenge them. For people like me, I like always to have this harmony and nice team, and the stuff is challenging, but maybe the way Kat is talking about is nicer to bring it up and say, hey, please, can you explain a little bit more? What do you mean by that? And then maybe have some examples to talk about. So when you ask them to clearly talk about what they are meaning, so sometimes they back off.
Other questions from the audience? I have one, but I'm holding off. Okay, my question is, if we were to give, well, we are going to give advice to BCIT leadership about how to move the dial on this particular topic. So for this question is for both of you, what would be sort of the top advice that you would give to BCIT leadership, right now, today, to move the dial? Not saying that there aren't things already going on, but I would love to hear from you, your top advice.
I have one very quick one. Ask them individually, all take the Harvard Business Bias Test, because that's the time you are going to learn about your own personal biases. This is very, very important. Everybody is aware of it. And secondly, have some checklist, some measurement, that how many times you capture yourself being biased. And then there are things that you can do from an organizational level, something you are doing today, like with Diversity Circle. It's really important to have all of those things, but I think at the end of the day, it goes back to what culture we come from, what family we come from, how we have been grown up, what people we have around us. And knowing about ourselves, to me, is the first step.
Yeah, and I would agree. Cultural stereotypes were certainly necessary when, millennia ago. It's built into our who we are and our DNA. It's the way that we could deal with urgent and emergent issues in an instant. You're not like me, therefore you're not from my village, therefore I must set up my defenses and protect. They're not necessary today, and we are sophisticated enough that we can figure that out. But often we I think, react. We use our gut reactions. We speak without thinking, and that Harvard implicit bias test is really an eye-opener, especially for those of us who've been advocates for inclusion and diversity and trying to create and foster an environment of belonging, to look at those tests and realize, oh, even I have some implicit biases that I was unaware of. So it's definitely a great start. The other piece that I would encourage leadership to consider is to really try to focus more on a meritocracy rather than quotas. Although we're looking at numbers to give us some metrics to measure whether or not we are being successful in including more women in engineering, for example, we don't want to start setting up quotas where women are going to begin to feel either that they've been allocated a position where they don't actually belong. That imposter syndrome is true. I mean, side note, when I was elected president, I went, really? Did they mean me? Did they know who it was that they elected? I'm thinking they did. But anyway, so we want to set up a scenario where we are as inclusive as possible. And a really brief story, I think, would help to identify this. When I was chair of the Engineers and Geoscientists BC Foundation, that's the organization that gives scholarships to engineering students who are on that path towards engineering. I asked if we could make our application program blind. We were giving out scholarships, 50% men, 50% women. We were being very even. And I just thought, I wondered if maybe our adjudicators were biased. Maybe they were actually giving more awards to women than really they deserved. So I suggested this to the board. They all said that was a great idea. And so we went through, and whenever the applications came in, one of the first things that our staff would do would be to eliminate all gender identifiers. So went ahead, sent it out to adjudicators, came back, and that first year, out of something like 40 or 50 applicants for 15 to 20 awards, 80% of the awards went to female students. That was a surprise to me. So I think if we work on a merit-based system and we eliminate those gender identifiers and we try to make our job descriptions and even just the descriptions of our institutions more gender neutral, we will go a long way to building that diverse environment and diverse culture that we want.
I have to admit, BCIT has the great opportunity, besides all of these things, to actually make the life of the different organizations better by providing some programs that can help women, that they come back to work after maternity leave, or for anyone, not just women, for anyone who has an interrupt for any reason. And also for creating intersectionality, like people with disability, or you already have a lot of good programs for people that they're immigrants to Canada, and just use all of those things and come up with some maybe new ideas. How we can help people, they come and stand on their own feet again, in a short period of time, and then they use whatever they can offer.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not alone, right? We can form partnerships too, and being that 30 by 30 network is one such partnership that really exists in information sharing. But we just, for example, entered into a funding application for money. It's over $1 million to help us with this issue at large. And we're entered into this with ASTT BC, the Applied Science Technicians and Technologists of BC, and ACEC BC, which is the Association of Consulting Engineers of British Columbia. The three of us co-applied for this funding model. So as a team, we can do more than we can do on our own.
Thank you so much. Those are fantastic suggestions, and I will pass them on to the powers that be. I'm going to finish. Oh, one more. This will be our last question. Excellent. Excellent. I want to keep us on time.
This is for Cappy, I think, specifically. Because I loved physics and science in high school, and I never once made the link to engineering in my mind. I actually applied for physics in university. In the end, it wasn't even just about making a positive difference or social difference. I just couldn't see what kinds of jobs related to physics. So now I'm wondering, because you're talking about how to help teachers, but for those of us that aren't teachers in the room, what can I do to encourage the young women that I know to help them make that link? Because I think I was 5 years out of high school before someone pointed out engineering, and I think I sort of thought of it as like a trade. So how do you connect that math and science and all of those ideas when you're not in a teaching role?
It's a challenge that we've been facing. Many of the institutions, like the UVic and UBC are the two that immediately come to mind for me. They run programs at the institution to bring students on board a science venture. I know that's at UVic. I don't know where else that is. And then the Girls Who Code. There was another program I think that was mentioned earlier today. And those are opportunities to get into the schools and get girls into the universities and institutions, to have them come and experience. But you're right, that only is available to those girls whose parents or teachers happen to have the foresight to get them connected and bring them together. That's why I was working with Physics 11 teachers and hoping that the Physics 11 classroom, where students are already showing that they have an aptitude for physics, for solving physics puzzles and problems, that might be somewhere that we can introduce engineering to girls and to boys. We get a lot of boys in our programs, and I don't know how it is here at BCIT, but we get a lot of boys into our programs who were really encouraged to enter the programs because guidance counselors said, oh, math and physics, oh, you have to be an engineer, it's a good thing. And I know a lot of the boys leave our program because they really wanted to go into the trades. They thought it was more like a trade than it actually is. Some of what we're trying to do now, at least in Victoria, the Engineers and Geoscientists BC branch in Victoria has been doing a lot of high school outreach programs, not only to high school, also to middle schools. And they have a 3-year plan where they go into every school in the region to talk to all of the kids there about engineering. They have a very brief presentation on different types of engineering, and then they have a little workshop kind of activity where they get to build something. It is a way to start to bring the definition of engineering to youth, and that's one way to get through. I think you're right. I think we have a long way to go to educate the general population about what engineering is, and I think if we can start to identify it as a helping profession, that we use physics to solve the world's puzzles, that might be a better way to really help identify what it is that we do.
I can just add a little bit to it. In SQS, that organization that I am working with is they have these programs, outreach programs, that is basically educating the young girls and also their parents and their teachers. So we had people going to schools and have presentation in the schools. But at the end of the day, it's all about awareness, creating that awareness, that what is the value as a girl going and learn about physics, math. So our actually group outreach program is called Miss Infinity, and that means if you go to math and physics, you have infinite opportunities to do things. So it's creating that knowledge for teachers and parents. That's the most important thing. Now, the challenge we have, like in BC, for example, we have a lot of rural areas. It's very difficult to reach them. So we have created e-mentoring program for those families or girls that are around the BC that it's not easy for them to come. But events like this, conversations about them with everybody you know, and then maybe use the social media for those type of awareness, just have some advertisement, something. We have opportunity now with the social media to do so much. And we just need to put our focus in that area and start having those conversations in different ways for parents and for teachers.
I want to take a moment to thank our speakers, Kathy and Fariba. Thank you so much. If you'll all join me. And I also want to thank our student moderator, Miranda. Thank you so much. So before you scoot out, I know that some people may need to scoot out, but before you scoot out, I'm going to formally close the program, but also I want to mention, you can see this fascinating chart on the screen. This is a hook to just, ask you to hang on a couple more minutes. Some of you attended our event. Basically 1 year ago, we had an event on gender diversity in engineering and technology 1 year ago. And that focused really on sort of where we're at, why it's important, what are the issues. And so the organizing committee and the faculty champions were sort of like, okay, now what? That's why today is called Now What? How do we actually make sure that we're moving the dial, because people know, students in the room know, faculty know, staff advisors know, there's definitely a dearth of women in computing and engineering programs at BCIT, just as there are in so many other post-secondaries. So we're going to finish off today by writing down our practical ideas. Kyla will explain. I'm not going to try to explain. Kyla will explain. It does involve Post-it notes. It does involve flip chart paper. So even if you have to scoot out, please try to spend a few minutes with the Post-it notes. Plus, you can also add feedback online. It says in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide, want to add your input later, go to this place in Google Drive, and you can add your input later. So before you scoot out, I really encourage you to stick around for a few more minutes. As far as formally closing the program, I want to thank all of you again for your time. We know what a busy time of year it is. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your input. And we appreciate your support of Diversity Circles and of each other. Thank you.